Good evening from Washington. I'm Larry O'Connor. Lots to get to, but we want to follow up on where we left off last night, and that is President Trump surrounded by Kanye West, Milo Yiannopoulos, Nick Fuentes, and well, it developed after our program last night over at the Tim Pool YouTube streaming show, Tim Pool IRL. It was quite a scene, and one of our best pals was there to witness it firsthand. Amber Athey from The Spectator and your own podcast streaming show as well. Remind me the name of it.
Unfit to Print.
Unfit to
on
Print.
WCBM.
So how did you get there to Tim Pool? I mean, you've done Tim Pool's show before.
Yeah, I did his show in March. That's the only time that I've been there.
Yeah.
And I just happened to get a call yesterday asking if I wanted to come to some top secret show that they were doing. I had an inkling of who was going to be there, but it wasn't confirmed. So I said, heck yeah, I'll get in my car right now. And I drove out to Western Maryland, and that was basically the only story to how I ended up there.
And I liked Tim Pool. He was getting some heat for giving a platform to Nick Fuentes and Milo. But you know how it is. You want to interview people who are in the news, and you ask them challenging questions. I thought he did just that. So what was the mood like in the room? Was it a little tense there as it began? Because it seemed, right at the beginning, it seemed uncomfortable.
Yeah, honestly, Ye seemed like he was in a pretty bad mood as soon as he got there, which I will say is kind of understandable because they had flown in from LA that day.
Oh.
And when they got to the airport, this is after, a 5-6 hour flight, however long it takes, their driver had gone to Dulles instead of Frederick Municipal Airport.
Ooh.
So they had to kill however much time it took the driver to get there from Dulles, and they ended up going to some local hibachi restaurant, which I
saw
imagine,
a picture on Twitter
yeah,
of that.
which I imagine is not up to Ye's normal dining standards. And so when they
Maryland hibachi restaurant.
I've been to many of them. I grew up in Frederick, and I can tell you they're not fine dining. But so by the time he arrived there, I'm sure he was probably tired, maybe a little hangry. And then you had all of the friends of the show sort of following him around the house and swarming him.
Yeah.
By the time he got up to the studio, I was supposed to actually sit in on the interview, and he basically was like, nobody else
just me and my
is allowed in here except for who's on the stream.
All right, so it looked like they talked for about 20 minutes, and the questioning sort of reached a point where Ye and Nick Fuentes chimed in, and Milo, they were talking about the Jews. That's how they kept saying they are doing this to me, and they are doing that to me, and they are doing this. And Tim Pool asked the appropriate question, which is, hold on, when you say they, are you saying all the Jewish people, or are you talking about individuals who happen to be Jewish? And that's where it really sort of started locking heads. Right?
It did,
by the way, that's the only question to ask.
I know,
obviously.
and
you got to have an answer.
You have to, and I talked to Tim before the show to kind of ask him what his, I guess, strategy was heading into it, and he basically told me that he didn't even want to get into that stuff until later on in the show because he just wanted to talk about the newsworthy element of Ye having dinner with Trump. What did he and Trump talk about? How is it that Milo and Nick Fuentes ended up associated with Ye? I mean, all of these questions I think people wanted to know the answers to, but it was Ye who took it to the Jew stuff almost immediately.
To the Jew stuff.
I mean, I don't know how else to say it. And so at that point, Tim, I think, really didn't have a choice but to start pushing back, and it devolved pretty quickly after that.
I think my favorite thing, which is I think right when Ye got up and left, is Tim Pool said something like, well, when you say they, it's not all of them. And Nick Fuentes, who claims he's always taken out of context as an anti-Semite, he said, oh, but it is them, isn't it? It's like, okay, well, here we are. At least the cards are on the table. So now where does this go from here? I mean, you were there. He got up, he left, he grabbed a handful of cookies, you said, as you said on your Twitter feed, and slammed the door. Do you think that Trump has maneuvered this thing well? He still hasn't really come out and said, this Nick Fuentes guy is bad news. And by the way, as long as Kanye continues to associate with him, that's bad news too. I mean, it seems easy to do.
Yeah, you would think so. I mean, at the same time, though, it is clear at this point that Trump did not know who Nick Fuentes was when he got to the dinner.
Ye confirmed that last night.
Right. He didn't even know that Nick was apparently going to be coming. Ye invited him himself.
Yeah.
And I think with Trump, it's difficult because the media is always telling him you have to condemn this or condemn that and condemn this person.
Right.
And then it becomes sort of condemnation whack-a-mole.
Yeah.
So I understand the impulse to just say, look, I don't know the guy, and that's that.
Yeah, I get that. And you don't want to, you don't have to condemn him because the media tells you should condemn him. You should condemn him because he's a Holocaust denier. And that shouldn't be hard, but everything is hard these days.
Yeah.
In fact, even fashion is hard. I wanted to talk to you because I saw you writing about this as well. This photo shoot for, I can't even pronounce this designer.
Balenciaga.
Thank you very much. And let's take a look at some of the pictures of this photo shoot because it involved children and, well, bondage. I mean, there's this teddy bear in the background of all the pictures and it's strapped up in leather. And well, first of all, is this a children's clothing line?
No, I mean, they do produce some children's clothing, but it's mostly an adult couture brand.
And certainly there's an adult theme to like that last girl, the way she was posing and things. And this, I mean, this caused a bit of an uproar. And this, of course, goes along with the conversations that we're having all the time about our children being sexualized too early. And there seems to be an agenda in pop culture and in academia even that it's okay to introduce sexual topics for children. So how did it bleed into the fashion world?
I honestly think that this has been a part of the fashion world for a long time, probably mostly just because it's edgy. But of course, that doesn't justify it.
Yeah.
And in one of the other campaign shoots for Balenciaga, separate from this BDSM bear child nonsense, is they actually had a court case underneath. They basically had a picture of a desk that they took, and on the desk was a court case.
Oh yeah, like paperwork of a Supreme Court decision. I saw
related
that.
to child pornography. And so that was entirely separate from this.
Yeah.
So twice now they've sort of waded into this.
And normally this would be, and by the way, you're right. I mean, listen, I remember when I was a kid, there was an uproar about Calvin Klein ads with Brooke Shields. But it was it was sort of like, it wasn't blatant like this stuff. I mean, I think Brooke Shields would say nothing gets between me and my Calvins, which suggests, oh, she's not wearing underwear, something stupid like that. But, and I get it, and she was 16, I guess. So you're right, the fashion industry has always sort of dabbled in this weirdness. But this is beyond, these are, 5-year-olds, for God's sake.
Yeah, and I think, no one pushed back on it for the longest time. I think since the Brooke Shields incident, you haven't really heard people expressing anger at the sexualization of children in both the film and fashion industries because they started to say, oh, well, you're just a bunch of Puritans and this is the satanic panic.
Right.
And so I think people were kind of resistant to talk about it. And meanwhile, these people were emboldened because they kept getting away with it.
In any normal part of society, anyone associated with this kind of thing would be condemned if they didn't jump right out and like say, oh my God, I had no idea. And I know that the designer has sort of claimed that they had no idea. But what about people like Kim Kardashian is associated with them and other major celebrities? They're not really doing much. They're not feeling any penalty and they're not separating themselves, are they?
No, and it's pretty incredible to see the blatant hypocrisy among a lot of these celebrities who would denounce one of their coworkers for not getting the vaccine or for being a secret Trump supporter.
Right.
But then you have what is essentially child pornography minus the nudity and exploitation. And Kim Kardashian's statement was about how she had to review the matter. What reviewing needs to take place? The pictures are right there.
Yeah. Well, listen, I don't like to think that everything in our world is political, but everything ends up being political. And if the political lines are being drawn about protecting children in our society or over-sexualizing them, I mean, I'm glad we're on the right side of that equation. I can't imagine why you wouldn't be. Yeah.
It's mind-blowing.
Thanks for making news over there with Tim Pool. Put in a good word for us. There's more to come on O'Connor Tonight.